All right. Happy Sunday, everyone. Excuse the appearance. I just wanted to get this done first thing in the morning. For me, at least, it's almost 11 o'clock. But we're 2 divisions away and 3 days away from the start of the NBA season. So we're going to hit this Pacific Division, which is probably the best division in basketball right now. Last year, I thought it was the Eastern Conference, the Northeast, the Atlantic Division, rather, that had, what, 4 playoff teams? Yeah, 4 playoff teams and 5 play-in teams if you included the Toronto Raptors. Now we have the Pacific Division, which may well have 5 playoff teams. There's a real possibility. So let's go through what they did this offseason and what the expectation can be going forward. So we're going to kick things off with the gold standard, the Golden State Warriors. Last year, they were 44-38. They had a phenomenal first round series, one of the best series of basketball that I've seen in the first round in a long time between the Warriors and the Kings. The Warriors came out on top, and then they kind of just got beat the hell out of by the Los Angeles Lakers, going down 3-1, struggling on the road, and then ultimately losing in 6 games. So what did they do this offseason to answer some of their questions, right? Last year, they had one of the best home records in the NBA, and they had one of the worst away records in the NBA. It was really bizarre, and a lot of it boiled down to, or was being attributed to, the fact that Draymond Green punched Jordan Poole in the face to start the season. When someone that is the energy bringer for your franchise or your team kind of takes away his own authority by socking a teammate, it makes it a little more difficult to do your job. So what did they do to answer that? Well, they sided with Draymond. Of course, they gave him the 4-year max contract. They trade Jordan Poole to the Wizards, and they get back Chris Paul, 37-year-old, almost 38-year-old Chris Paul. They lose Dante DiVincenzo to the Knicks. JaMychal Green is still a free agent, and Andre Iguodala, another staple, a pillar of that franchise, has retired. They bring back Rudy Gay, who just got cut, Rodney McGruder, who just got cut, Corey Joseph, really solid guard, and Dario Saric as a stretch 5. So they didn't really answer their questions in terms of size, right? They still don't have much size. Kevon Looney and Draymond Green do a very good job at what they do, and Kevon Looney is one of the most exciting rebounders in the game of basketball. But in any minute that he's not on the court, you're going to get bullied unless you do this death by committee approach. But it seems like the Warriors are just going to run it back. Flipping Jordan Poole for Chris Paul is a bit of a weird thing to say, right? When you talk about Chris Paul's career and some of the demons that he has had to face, a lot of them start with the Warriors. And now he's going to be paired with them. So he's going to have it's going to be a weird thing to see where one of the greatest players in the history of the game, who has consistently run into the roadblock of the Warriors, is never going to get the chance to exercise that demon. He's actually going to have to play alongside them. But the Dubs, to their credit, made a pretty ballsy maneuver going for Chris Paul. I know he's kind of an antithesis of what they play, the fast, lightning style of basketball, but he does answer a question for them. Chris Paul has been successful with any unit that you put him with. You take him from the Clippers, you put him in Houston with James Harden, plays incredibly well, makes them a contender. You trade him for Russell Westbrook, send him to the Thunder, plays incredibly well, gets them to the playoffs. Trade him to the Phoenix Suns, a baby team that was up and coming, makes them a contender. And now he's on the Warriors. So a lot of what Chris Paul is going to be doing is just keeping the ship afloat when Steph Curry's not on the court. Steph Curry, I believe, last year had one of the best plus minuses in the league. But in any minute that he was not on the court, they were getting torched. So Chris Paul is going to be that guy to keep the ship steady in any moment that Steph Curry is not on the court. The Dubs should still be very good. I know Jordan Poole was nuclear offensively, but his last couple games in the Wizards for the preseason is pretty much what we expect. 9 of 10 for the field in the first half against the Knicks, 41-point bomb, 10 of 19 for the field. If you do the math there, he had a horrible second half. And then the next game, 1 for 15, 7 points. So as nuclear as he could be, as many games as he may be able to win you by going completely ballistic, he also can rub the team the wrong way, right? Telling Draymond Green that he's a scrub, that he's a heavy backpack for Steph Curry. Or he'll have one of those really bad nights. And since the Dubs have moved away from Monte Ellis, which was what, like 2012, 2011, they've been largely drama free. Outside of, the on the court outbursts from Draymond Green, they've really kept their names out of the headlines in terms of locker room turmoil. And we've seen that with a lot of other teams, the Lakers, namely recently, right, with Russell Westbrook, all those little issues that kept making things a little awkward and weird. Even the best franchises have it. Somewhere like even in Miami, right? We see them as a pinnacle of success when it comes to a locker room and their culture. But on the court blowups between Udonis Haslem and Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler, right? Things can happen that show some kind of internal strife. The Warriors have not had that until last season with Draymond Green socking Jordan Poole in the face. So as talented as Poole is, he was causing some real issues, and I don't know if it's attributed to it, but it could be. It led to some of their chemistry on the road, like a lot of those issues, a lot of those chemistry road game problems. Still, this team has one of the greatest players in NBA history, who, despite being 35, like typically we as basketball fans image like 32, 33, 34 as like the downside of a career. Steph Curry just put up 29 points a game and a career high 6 rebounds. That paradigm is changing. So despite being older, Curry's still going to be one of the greatest players today. He's arguably top 3 right now. Some people would put him 1, 2. Obviously, I put Giannis and Jokic in those 2 spots. But Curry could be 3, 4, 5. Like, he's still one of the best players in the world. And they're going to be hunting for playoff positioning. They kind of made an all-in maneuver to maximize this closing window. Because how many more years of Curry are we going to have? Draymond Green's already showing massive signs of aging. Klay Thompson's on the last year of his contract, and I don't know what's going to happen with that. But there's potential that he may not be there anymore. I do think that the Warriors are going to miss Dante DiVincenzo. It's really hard to get that 94 feet defensive pressure that he was providing alongside 40% from 3. Corey Joseph can fill in a bit of that on the defensive side of things. He's a really tenacious guard. And Dario Saric is one of the better stretch 5s in the game. So that could be another thing. When it comes to their offseason, I can't really grade it because you got to see it in action. This is one of those situations where it looks okay on paper, but it looks weird. So you don't know how successful it's going to be. My only concern is, as good as Chris Paul is, as many games as Chris Paul can help you win, and as successful as he can be with any unit you put alongside him, he's not exactly reliable in the playoffs. And it's not in terms of his play. He's always going to play well. It's just his health. And after the stretch marathon of a season, he tends to find ways to be injured in the postseason. That is not his fault. It's just how he's built. And it's one of those things that they may have to cross that bridge too, as every Chris Paul-led team has had to cross. What can their season look like? I think this is a pretty injury-prone team. Draymond Green's already going to miss time to start the season, which is a big loss for them. Maybe another mid-40 win season, potentially like the back half of the playoffs. That's my prediction. I think they'll probably be pushing something like the 6th seed again, maybe even the play-in. The top side of the West is just too strong, and this team is just much older than I think we give them credit for. Curry's 35, Draymond's in his mid-30s, Klay Thompson's in his mid-30s. That's already their core, and then their 4th best player now, and Chris Paul is one of the oldest players in the league. So I would say like 44, 45 wins seems about right, but they could easily win 50, right? If everything goes right, if the players start getting healthy and they start hitting a stride. Chris Paul and Steph Curry showed some phenomenal chemistry in the preseason as well. So there's a lot of potential to be had here in Golden State. It's just, how is it going to fit? And how are they going to be able to mesh those 2 styles of play? The lightning quick strike offense that the Warriors have become famous for over the last decade versus the methodical slow motion approach that Chris Paul brings to basketball. But yeah, I think they're going to replicate what they did this past year. 44 wins sounds about right. But in the postseason, as long as they're healthy, they're going to give anybody trouble. Next up, we have the Clippers. 44-38 last year, 5th in the West. They lose to the Phoenix Suns after Kawhi Leonard blows his knee. Now, what did they do? They lose Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon is out, but they add KJ Martin. Really solid, athletic young wing from Houston. I was surprised Houston let him go, and they bring on Joshua Primo, which I just didn't understand. But there were no other big moves that happened in Clipperland. Has there ever been a team more inextricably tied to health than the Clippers? And it feels like this every single year. There's always a stretch in the regular season where either where either Kawhi Leonard or Paul George miss a huge chunk of time, or they're healthy for the most part. They have a phenomenal year. They win like 50-something games. And then in the postseason, one of them goes down, if not both of them. They have one of the better coaches in the game in Tyronn Lue. They have a solid addition of wing talent, players like Nicholas Batum, who I know is retiring after this season. Marcus Morris, despite how you may feel about him, he's still a pretty good wing. But it's like every time they seem like they're building some momentum and looking like the contender we all picture them as because of the talent on the roster, they just get hurt. This is potentially the last year that we're going to see this team play together. We're looking at Kawhi Leonard and Paul George both on the last final guaranteed year. Then you also have the expiring contracts of Marcus Morris, Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, and Mason Plumlee. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rotation players and 2 stars and 4 rotation players off the team. We don't know what's going on with the James Harden situation. The price seems to be too steep. They don't want to match whatever Philly's asking for when it comes to getting Harden. But even if they have Harden, does that really change their fortunes that much? I don't know. I don't really see it. They only have 5 guaranteed players for next year. Amir Coffey, the rookie Kobe Brown, Norman Powell, Zubats, and Terrence Mann. That's it. So what potentially could have been one of the dynasty in Clipperland ended up becoming just a bust. And this is the last season they have to do it. With Kawhi Leonard and Paul George healthy, they're a contender. Kawhi Leonard's one of the best players when he's healthy, if not the best player when he's healthy, to be on a basketball court. It's just they have a notorious injury history. And it's not their fault. Kawhi Leonard has some severe atrophy that you just can't overcome. And whenever certain amounts of stress get put on his body, certain amounts of stress gets put on his body just crumbles. And Paul George too. Very similar. Now, Westbrook did do a phenomenal job for them towards the end of last season. He brought energy in controlled doses on the offensive side of the ball. He seemed like he was playing much more confidently. His defense was incredible. I don't know if you remember watching the Clippers versus the Suns, but he got a few blocks on Durant. He was locking up on the perimeter. He was wrecking havoc in passing lanes, and he was actually converting his layups. His layups and mid-range jumpers that failed him throughout his entire tenure in Los Angeles on the Lakers side of things became one of the best weapons in basketball on the Clippers side of things. Now, this squad is still bereft of depth. If a star goes down for a prolonged stretch, which, for the most part, almost every team can say that. There are very few teams that can say, oh, we lost one of our starters, let's just plug and play. Very few teams can do that. But if any team is going to be more impacted than others, it's probably going to be the Clippers. That can change if they find a way to land, James Harden a little bit. If it can kind of swing their fortunes, if you will. Even so, could they win 50 wins? Could they have a 50-win season, be one of the top 4 seeds in the West? 50, I think, last year would have got them the 3 seed. Maybe. But can you say that this team's going to stay healthy for a long enough period of time that 50 wins seems like it's a possibility? I don't think so. And it's mighty unfortunate. This is one of the biggest what-ifs in basketball history, right? What if Kawhi Leonard never got hurt in 2021? 2020 was the one year that they were actually healthy in the bubble and they lost. But 2021, they were pulling all kinds of demons. They came this close to beating the Phoenix Suns without him. They came really close and had a lot of success. But I do think that this unfortunate group is probably going to push off a 43-win season. I think that feels more realistic with Kawhi Leonard's injury history. Just the older talent they have, players on the verge of retiring, like Nicholas Batum. There's just a lot of turmoil and not much future sight for the Clippers. And that, I think, matters. To the other side of LA, the Lakers. They were one of the best teams in the second half of the season. For all of the bad moves that they made after losing in 2021, mostly because LeBron got hurt and a little bit of Anthony Davis injuries, they trade away everything that made them good. All the spacing, all the perimeter defense, players like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, they move on, right? And they pick up Russell Westbrook and a bunch of just non-fitting players for their roster. And what they did instead over the course of the last year and a half leading into, the trade deadline of last season was get rid of all of those players and bring in just guys that fit. Say goodbye to second-round draft picks and Patrick Beverley, and we're going to bring on Rui Hachimura. Say goodbye to Russell Westbrook's contract and a couple of first-round picks, and bring on players like Jared Vanderbilt, like D'Angelo Russell, etc., players that actually helped them become what they were. So what did they do this offseason after being 43-39 and having a very close sweep? They got swept by the Denver Nuggets. They move on from Mo Bamba, Malik Beasley, Troy Brown Jr., Wenyen Gabriel, Dennis Schroeder, who I think they're really going to miss, Tristan Thompson, and Lonnie Walker. And they pick up Jackson Hayes, a young athletic center, Hoods Schifino, a rookie with some, decent shooting chops, Taurean Prince is a big, oversized wing, Cam Reddish, who I was surprised keeps getting chances in the NBA, Gabe Vincent from the Miami Heat, really good perimeter defender and shooter, Christian Wood, and they retain on good contracts. Anthony Davis, obviously max, you can't really grade that as a good contract, except for his superstar talent. Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, and Jared Vanderbilt. Now, what makes a contract good, right? Is it the length of time that you have a player signed up for? Like for a superstar, a good contract would be something like making sure you have them locked in for the max amount of time, right? A player like Steph Curry, you're going to pay him the top dollar. So a good contract for him is, hey, we got you locked in here for 5 years. We're making sure that we retain your services for as long as possible. What makes a good contract for, a weird superstar, someone like Kyrie Irving, someone who's a little less reliable, but still superstar talent? Exactly what the Mavericks gave him. 2 years guaranteed, 1 year player option, right? So we're not tied to you for a prolonged period of time. Now, what is the same thing, but for, middling talents, guys that aren't exactly all-stars, but that are pivotal rotation players for your roster? Is it easy to trade these players if you need to? And that's exactly what the Lakers did. 3 years and $50 million for Rui. Easily tradable. That's a mid-level contract. And most teams should be able to absorb that cap hit, if not be able to match, to send back with expiring. Austin Reeves, 4 years, $54 million. Very easily tradable. The guy's still young, has a lot of upside. D'Angelo Russell signed a 1-1. Right? He's making like 20-something million, but it's a 1-1. So this year is the only year that's guaranteed, which makes it very easy to move on from. So they didn't just make good contracts in terms of the money that they spent while retaining the talent that they had. They made it easy for them to move on from those players should the need arise. Let's say, hey, we have too many guards. We're actually too deep after having, Cam Reddish is actually playing pretty well. Gabe Vincent is doing really well. And now Austin Reeves is filling in everything. And D'Angelo Russell is now out of the rotation. And the ship isn't just afloat, it's thriving. We can easily trade D'Angelo Russell. Same thing if you flip it around and now Gabe Vincent doesn't fit. 3 years, $33 million. That's a very easily absorbable contract. As well as, just picking up a player that potentially doesn't fit with the Lakers, but may fit with your roster. So those are the things that matter. The Lakers did largely retain what got them to the Western Conference Finals last year, which is a very smart decision. I know it was a sweep, but very much like the Nets and Celtics a few years back, all of those games were incredibly close. I do think that the Lakers will miss Dennis Schroeder. Schroeder gave them a lot on the ball in terms of like on-ball defense, being a pest, and also just he had ice in his veins. Dennis Schroeder is one of those players. I do think Gabe Vincent does cover up a lot of that loss, though. They are, however, deeper on the wing, which is good. Picking up someone like Cam Reddish, who, the potential's all there. He's really good in theory, but it doesn't really work out wherever he goes. But adding Taurean Prince, who's a proven, perimeter defender and shooter, alongside Vanderbilt and an improved Rui, I think really bolsters their chances. After going 2-10 to start the season last year, the first 12 games, the Lakers turned things around and went 41-29, despite those trades not happening until the end of the turn of 2023, right? So being able to maintain their record and keeping a respectable pace for as long as they did benefited them after they made all the moves that made their team more competitive, which was really impressive. This should be a team that fights for the top 3 seeds in the West. LeBron and AD continue to play at top 10 level talent, and if they figure out what was keeping them back last year, which was their shooting, right? They couldn't make a jump shot for the life of them. This could be one of the best regular season teams in the league this year. The talent's all there. They have the superstars. It meshes. They have the shooting. They have an injection of youth and athleticism. It should be good. I know LeBron is entering year 21, and he's kind of in that position of age where you would expect a massive drop-off. But he just came off of a year putting up 29, 8, and 6. And pre-foot injury, right before he tore a tendon in his foot, he had a stretch where he was carrying the Lakers and was putting up 35 a game. So LeBron playing LeBron ball is still very much a possibility. Just it can't happen for the entirety of a season, the entirety of a postseason run, and an Olympic run right after that. That's not who he is anymore. He's just way too old. But for a stretch, he can still do it. And as long as AD stays healthy, I know every year now he's like, I want to play 82 games, and then he gets hurt the first 2 weeks of the season, which is kind of like a really bizarre trend that's happened. This team's still very good. As I said, they have tradable contracts, so if they need, we need a center. We have too many wings. They can trade some wings, pick up a center. They have the opportunity to. It's all those lovely, lovely mid-tier, under $20 million contracts with talent. They have the maneuverability to fill voids that get exposed during the regular season. I know that they're kind of tied to Anthony Davis being more injury prone, especially now that he's basically there for the rest of his career, as well as LeBron. But this team has players that can kind of fill in spot minutes for those two going down, right? D'Angelo Russell is a very good, first option. We saw it when he was on the Brooklyn Nets. We saw it again when he was with the Timberwolves. He could kind of right the ship for a little while. Still, this could be a 50-plus win team, but I think 50 sounds like a good estimate. I would say the 3 seed in the West. Whew. Let me take a sip of this coffee. All right. Next up, we have quite a few teams here. A couple left. The Phoenix Suns. The very next team we have on. Now, they were very busy this offseason, but they went all in. This is a team that went above and beyond the second apron, so they have very little cap maneuverability going forward. But they went 45-37. They lost to the Nuggets in 6 games, which didn't really feel like a competitive 6-game series because it took Devin Booker going completely nuclear for them to win anything. So what did they do? They move on from DeAndre Ayton, who was incredibly miserable. Darius Bazley is gone. Bismack Biyombo, Torrey Craig, Jacques Landale, Chris Paul, Cam Payne, Terrence Ross, Landry Shamet, TJ Warren, all gone. That's a lot of players to lose. So who do they bring back, right? Because you lose all those players, you got to bring back other ones to fill. They were busy. They pick up Grayson Allen in part of that trade. Udoka Azubuike, Keita Bates-Diop, really solid pickup. They trade everything for Bradley Beal. They put in Bobo. They take Drew Eubanks and Yusuf Nurkic, the 2 big men from my Portland Trailblazers. They pick up Eric Gordon, Jordan Goodwin. We're not even done yet. Keon Johnson, Nasir Little, Chimezi Metu, and Yuta Watanabe. All are new Phoenix Suns. They went ham, but they did a great job considering they had no cap flexibility and no picks to trade. They still don't have a point guard. At least a point guard that can, play for a long period of time. But they have a lot of good ball handlers, right? Grayson Allen could bring the ball up. Eric Gordon could bring the ball up. Obviously, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal can all bring the ball up. So I think that's going to be their death by committee in terms of playing point guard. They don't really have point guard depth at all. So they're going to use those other players to fill in those responsibilities. While, keeping depth on the roster to handle an injury or two. Someone like Nasir Little can fill in for a little bit, right? I think he was a really good pickup. He's a very good, talented, young, do-it-all wing. Eric Gordon, he's still serviceable on the 3-and-D end despite being in his late 30s. Grayson Allen was a rotation player on a contender in Milwaukee. And Yuta Watanabe is the best 3-point shooter in the league last year. So a lot of those little things. I know losing Jacques Landale kind of hurts them a little bit, especially since he proved to be a competitor, right? That's one of the things that you can't teach. He went out there and was like, hey, I'm not as talented as DeAndre Ayton, but I'm going to outplay his ass. And he did. But they pick up Yusuf Nurkic, who I think is an incredibly frustrating player, but is also one that has nothing but talent. And now Bobo. Feel how you do about him. I don't think anybody has any strong feelings one way or the other towards Bobo, but the talent is always there. He shows it in flashes. A lot of young versatility to fill in that 5 spot. Phoenix is one of those interesting teams because it's kind of weird how it's all going to fit when you don't have a real setup man. But we were talking about it last year going into this season that Devin Booker's become a really good on-ball ball creator, right? Like offensive initiator. Kevin Durant's always kind of been like that. I don't know if you remember when he won his MVP, a big reason why was because of his evolution as a ball handler, as a guy who brought the ball up and initiated the offense and got his teammates involved because Russell Westbrook was out with injury. So those are the things that I think are going to come up and be beneficial for them. I do think they're going to miss not having a true facilitator. And this is one of those teams that, like they're incredibly top heavy, very, very top heavy. But they did a damn good job filling out the depth on that roster. Like if you look at the list from Basketball Real GM to see everybody that came in, it's a long list. They retained Josh Okogie. They retained Damian Lee, Saban Lee as well. This solid roster of talent. Got to give them their props. Really good offseason, one of the best ones this summer. And they should be one of the top 4 teams, right? Denver, Memphis, LA, Phoenix. 50-win team feels good. 45-50 feels about right. I can't put anything negative on what Phoenix did this season. They just got to find a way to micromanage their players' health, keep them in line to stay healthy and have a prolonged season to a prolonged health to lead into the offseason, the postseason. And then the last team, the Sacramento Kings. Who the hell thought they were going to finish third in the Western Conference last year? I did not. So last 2 seasons ago, they had 30 and 52. I thought they were going to kind of repeat that. I didn't think they were going to be good. And then all of a sudden, Aaron Fox is closing games and closing it to the best with the best of them. Like he became the clutch player of the year. He was the most clutch player in all of basketball last season. And I don't think anybody saw that coming. So what did they do this offseason? They lose Rashawn Holmes. He gets traded. Jamize Metu, free agent, signed with Phoenix. Terrence Davis is still a free agent. Matthew Dellavedova, still a free agent. And they pick up Chris Duarte, I think, to fill in a bit of that Terrence Davis role, a little bit of that Matthew Dellavedova role. They sign JaVale McGee. They bring in a veteran championship center. They retain Harrison Barnes. I'm not a big Harrison Barnes guy. And they kind of keep most of their core. So why were they successful last year? Well, they had the best offense in basketball history. They went out there and gave you 120 points per game. They were just unstoppable, lightning quick, incredibly athletic. They were do it all on the offensive side of things. Domantas Sabonis became one of the better offensive initiators. And a lot of this came through Coach Mike Brown, which I did not think he was capable of, to be honest. And this comes down to what he learned when he was an assistant in Golden State. Because I remember back in the day, I'm old enough, and it's my own paradigm here. When I watched him coach the Cleveland Cavaliers in LeBron's first stint, the only play he had was high screen and roll. And it was just, LeBron and Ilgauskas, create something. And that was it. And this season, he came out here with this incredibly young, talented, athletic group of players. Everybody here is like 26 and under. And was like, we're going to run past everybody. He had phenomenal shooters, Malik Monk, Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter. He had one of the best mid-range scorers in the game in De'Aaron Fox. Domantas Sabonis was giving people the work on the post and creating off the free throw line and extended. Like just really good, fun basketball here. But why were they successful beyond that? They were healthy. Let me give you the list here. Harrison Barnes played all 82 games. Keegan Murray played 80 of 82. Davion Mitchell played 80 of 82. Domantas Sabonis, 79. Malik Monk, 77. Kevin Huerter, 75. Trey Lyles, 74. De'Aaron Fox, 73. So their core 8 guys played almost the entire season. That's a big reason why they were able to win 48 games. right? Because when everybody else is struggling to keep their stars and starters up, right? We went over like Miami where they play 50 something games, and Jimmy Butler, Damian Lillard plays 50 something games in Portland. All these other stars, LeBron and Anthony Davis, are guaranteed to miss at least a month and a half. These guys were all up and running, and that's a testament to whatever their training camp looks like, whatever their training staff looks like as well. But is that going to maintain? Like, what would happen if De'Aaron Fox has to miss a month or two? And I love Malik Monk. I think he can fill in, but they're not going to be nearly as successful. So that's going to be my concern going into this year. I think that with how much improvement we saw throughout the Western Conference, the Kings kind of stagnated a little bit. And don't get me wrong, it could work because they have young talent. The talent that's here, they're not past the age of improvement, right? Everybody here is 26, 24, 25, 20 years old. They could obviously still improve. They can still get better. It's just, will they be able to survive some kind of prolonged injury to one of their better players? So that's the only concern. Beyond that, I think this is a damn good team. I don't think they're going to be a top 4 seed in the West anymore, and not like they were last season. They might be on that back half. We just went over the top 4 that I think maybe, like Denver, the Lakers, Memphis, and the Phoenix Suns. Then you got like maybe like the Warriors, Dallas. Then you're talking about like the Kings and the Clippers, right? Because just the talent like gap there. So good team, bright young future. Malik Monk was incredible last season. I'm surprised he was not paid more money because of how well he played. And they gave the Warriors hell in the postseason. Want to give them their credit. But that's it for this division. And a really, really impressive division of talent. A lot of variation here. We have the Warriors, who are a super old, very veteran group, but championship ready. We have the Clippers, very injured, but also championship ready. We have the Lakers, who found a way to bridge mid-20-year-olds and 39-year-old LeBron and mid-30s AD. A lot of depth and age talent. We have the Phoenix Suns, who just went all in on superstars and mid-level, like, I guess you would say minimum agents. And the Sacramento Kings, who are like kind of a dark horse now, despite coming 3rd place in the West last year. It's incredible. It's incredible where we've come. But thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoy Football Sunday, and I will catch you potentially later tonight or tomorrow. Peace.